Many people believe that since we live in the time of technology, it should be used to solve almost any problems in our lives. After all, people have learned to perform complex operations, create virtual reality, and even launch rockets into space. However, there are situations where real problems can only be solved with the help of true fate and human relationships. Well, knowledge and even the most prominent technologies are absolutely powerless. This is exactly the kind of incredible incident that happened in an American hospital when a woman's life hung in the balance after she gave birth. Let me get ahead of myself and say that it was only thanks to one sudden and seemingly strange decision of a nurse that a real miracle happened, which no one can still explain. 23-year-old Shelley Colley from South Carolina and her husband Jeremy never imagined that one day they'd have to become a major medical sensation. They were the most ordinary couple. They led a healthy lifestyle, and after having a big wedding, they started planning to have a baby. Both partners took it very responsibly when Shelley found out she was pregnant. Instead of just calling and telling her husband, she arranged an entire celebration. Jeremy, the father-to-be, was on cloud nine. Thus, the couple spent the next 8 months in anticipation until one day the doctors told them that their baby was in danger and that they needed to perform an emergency C-section. Unfortunately, the birth of their much-awaited baby nearly turned tragic for the Kelly family. Before going under anesthesia for several hours, Shelley held her husband's hand until the very last moment while he stayed by her side and tried to support his beloved wife in every possible way. Experienced doctors knew their job well, so the surgery was successful, and little Rylan was born completely healthy. Jeremy was so happy to see his daughter and hold her for the first time that he forgot about all his worries. However, he didn't know it yet, but something had happened to his beloved Shelley. Just 2 minutes later, the new father was informed that his wife fell into a coma, even though Shelley had no contraindications to the surgery. Apparently, her body couldn't handle the anesthesia and stress. Shelley threw a blood clot, which went into her brain and provoked a coma. The woman's lungs quickly filled up with fluid and her oxygen levels were going down. The doctors also said that her blood pressure was very high and that surgeons were fighting for her life in the operating room at that very moment. Unfortunately, the situation was very difficult, and it was highly unlikely that the doctors would be able to save the woman. Can you imagine what the poor husband had to go through getting to see and hold his baby for the first time? Jeremy wanted to jump for joy, but he couldn't because at the same time the doctors were fighting for the life of his beloved wife. All he could do was hope for a miracle and wait for the doctors to do their job. It's worth noting that about an hour of manipulations didn't have any effect, and when surgeons were already preparing for the worst, a nurse, Ashley Menus, came up with a brilliant idea. The woman wasn't sure if what she was suggesting made any sense, but she knew that medical studies had proven that skin-to-skin contact between mother and child could help babies. But what if it could work the other way around too? What if it could awaken Shelley's maternal instincts? After the nurse's suggestions, there was a moment of silence in the operating room, but since there were no other ideas, the doctors decided to grab this last straw, even though it seemed rather unlikely to work. Just a couple minutes later, the baby was already at her mother's side. However, as soon as she was near Shelley, the baby immediately fell asleep, and all attempts to wake her up were in vain. Then there was only one thing left to do. The nurse took the sleeping baby in her arms and put her on her mother, and at that moment the baby girl began to cry loudly. And after just a few seconds, a real medical miracle happened. Science still can't explain this phenomenon, but sensors showed that Shelley's brain started working. Doctors looked at the monitors with surprise and shrugged. The nurse's idea worked. After touching her daughter, the young mother came out of the coma, and after a week of regular skin-to-skin therapy for mother and baby, Shelley fully recovered and was able to hold her baby in her arms. To say that it was a real miracle is to say nothing, but that's exactly what happened. The Galilee family thanked Nurse Ashley for a long time. However, no amount of gifts or words could ever be enough to express their gratitude for what she'd done for their family. In turn, the modest nurse kept saying that the time would come and little Rylan would learn how she performed a real miracle because it was the little baby who saved her mother's life. Even though no one really knows how it worked, the story has a happy ending and teaches us never to give up and always believe in miracles, even if all hope seems lost. Friends, have you ever been in a situation where it was only a true miracle or some invisible force that influenced how the situation resolved?